So to help with your video editing and your highlight reels, I wanted to give you guys some tips on how to actually maybe edit these and get a little bit of workflow. Some of you may not have video editing experience. There's nothing super crazy and then nothing software specific we're going to go over, but just some good practices when you're actually editing video. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the rule of thirds. You may have heard about this before. You may have seen it in film. The idea though is to imagine your footage or your image divided into thirds. And on those line segments or those divides or those segmentations of your film, you will actually align your subject. And a lot of times in film, you'll actually have the subject's eyes aligned on an intersection of that video, and you can actually kind of see it in my video right here, the dividing lines. Now what this does is give us some dynamic feel to the video. It allows us to feel invited in, it gives a little bit of space, and also has us focusing on the subject itself. Some people think that if you put it centered, that you actually focus on it, but what that does is create a ton of space around the subject, and it doesn't really tell you where to pull your eyes into. It gives you more depth to your scene, and allows people to actually look into and feel invited to come into the scene. So utilizing that rule of thirds, you can create some really cool shots and make your videos a little bit more appealing and a little bit more inviting. So the second thing I want to talk about is cuts. And I'm not going to go through all the cuts, but I do want to go over a couple standard cuts that are going to help you edit your footage together. There's not any fancy transitions to these, but they will help you tell the story that you're wanting to tell in your montage or video. Now the first thing is actually the standard cut. The standard cut is literally just ending one shot and going into the next scene. The next thing is called a jump cut. You've probably heard this a lot if you've been on YouTube. A jump cut, and it's actually used in this video, is to actually go from the same sequence or the same scene and jump multiple times into the future. So stopping and appearing, stopping and appearing, stopping and appearing, and just cutting into the same shot at different points in time. You can use it to change positions or anything else. It doesn't have to be the exact same shot, but it does want to be within the same lapse of time or the same scene. Next thing you have is actually something called an L cut. And the reason it's called an L cut is actually will look like an L cut on your editing timeline. What this does is allow your video to stop before your audio transitions into the next shot. For example, you're doing an action sequence and a big explosion just into the scene. The video is essentially done and it's paused, but there's an echo to the boom of that explosion. That echo could transition into the next sequence while the video of the explosion has actually stopped already. Really cool transition, tying those two scenes together. The opposite of an L cut is actually called a J cut. This is actually when your video goes longer than the audio of that shot or scene. This can be used as an example to make a scene a little bit more dynamic or have dialogue be introduced before the next sequence so you can transition smoothly, especially if someone wants to stop and think and you want to introduce the next shot with someone talking. One little trick you can do when you're editing your video is actually adjust zooms while you're cutting your video. What this can do is actually create a dynamic feel to the video so it's not so static. In this video, I'm actually using one camera angle, popping the video on different points, and things that I really want to express, I might zoom in a little bit. But then you zoom back out and make sure the story still flows. As you're making cuts in your shots and your scenes, make sure you are thinking about the story and what you're trying to tell. If you want to pace this out and make it move smoothly and slowly, and you need a little bit of time to rest and have them digest it, make sure that you have those points in there. If it's something that's supposed to be rapid, cut out all the extra stuff. Make sure they can keep up with the tempo of your story. Once you have a shot edited out, make sure you're color correcting all this. There's different things in every software. Most likely you're going to want to mess with your levels, and you're actually going to want to mess with your LUTs. Adding color correction to your videos can really make your videos pop and add to the story that you're trying to tell. Lastly, add a little bit of music to it, add some graphics or text into it. That way people can follow along and actually see those key points. Just as professors use slides to help you educate you and help you keep along, adding text to your scenes and shots can actually help in the same way. So the first thing we're going to do is go through all the footage we recorded. We're going to watch it. We're going to delete the stuff that's useless, and we are going to rename the stuff that we want to keep in our video. Alright, so we got DaVinci Resolve open. From here, all we have to do is drag in over our footage that we've already renamed, drop it in, go ahead and change it to where it's all the same. Go ahead and put that down. Now that we've named all this, we can go ahead and figure out which order we want it to. We'll still need to do a little bit of cropping and editing. There's several different modes to DaVinci Resolve. There's the media, there is the cut, There's the edit fusion. There's the color, Fairlight, and deliver. So in DaVinci Resolve, you have a couple standard tools in most video software. There is the selector, and then there's a blade, and this is going to help you a lot with your editing. If you hit B, it actually goes to blade, and that actually is going to cut up your timeline. If you hit A, that's your selector, and you can actually select different points. So there are a couple of spots we need to edit on this timeline. One of them is actually right about here where this pop is. And I'm going to just go ahead and hit B, click on the timeline, and I want to go ahead and hit A, select that, and then delete it. DaVinci is actually going to realign everything for us, and so it's very simple to get through this editing process we want to.